Okay. We will call this meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee to order. The first order of business is the call to order and introductions. If we could ask the roll to be called, we'll go through the introductions and indicate whom you represent or whom you're appointed by, please.
Sky White. Ricardo Fernandez.
I'm here, appointed by Commissioner Miller, representing District 3.
Hoyt Prindle.
Good morning. I'm here, appointed by Commissioner Pat Kemp.
David Bailey. Vivian Handy. Stephen Hollenkamp.
Stephen Hollenkamp here, City of Plant City.
Nicole Rice. Nicole, I know you're in there. Nikki Rice, you're on mute.
There are several people who are members who have entered in the chat box that they're having difficulty with the audio, including Vivian Handy.
Okay, so Vivian is there. All right. All right, I'm putting Nicole Rice as present because I see her in the chat.
Yeah, I see her.
Cheryl Soule. Christine Acosta.
Good morning. I'm here. I'm appointed by Tempe City Council member Joseph Citro.
Artie Fryer. Or Nancy Castellano. Bill Roberts.
I'm here. I'm appointed by the Aviation Authority.
Edward Rajewski.
Yeah, I'm here, appointed by Hart.
Okay. Skelton Jr.
Mr. Skelton is present. He's not actually an official appointee yet. He's new.
Okay. Jeff Lucas is noted as absent. Is he here?
I don't believe so.
Dana Lazarus. She's here. Showing Dana as being present on the screen.
Yeah, Dana is present. She's actually not a member anymore because she's employed by the MPO.
Okay. Cliff Rice.
Reese here, neighborhoods at large.
Thank you. Luciano Prida.
I'm here. I was recommended by the Downtown Partnership. I think the CAC appointed me, accepted me, and representing business interests.
Camilo Soto. Terrence Trott.
Good morning. Terrence is here representing African American at large.
Amy Espinoso.
Yes, Amy Espinosa. I represent women at large.
Okay, and Rick Richmond.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Rick Richmond, appointed by the Planning Commission.
And Barbara Kennedy Gibson. Barbara Kennedy Gibson. She's up here. Let's see her. No, Rich is here. Yeah. Just there. Okay. I'm Roger Roscoe. That's all I have. Okay, we have I think I show 13 present.
That's what I show too.
Good. Thank you very much. We will declare a quorum available for the meeting. I'd like to take this opportunity to comment on something Rich said just a moment ago and note that Dana Lazarus is not on the committee anymore. I want to thank her for her service and time and valuable contributions over the past year or two or longer. Dana will be working, I guess, for the MPO. So we'll be seeing her from time to time. And we have a new applicant to fill that position, Mr. Skelton. Hopefully will join us at the next meeting and be a full voting member. So Dana, thank you very much for your work and your service and your interest and the time you put in to serve this Citizens Advisory Committee. At this point, we would like to invite public comment. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, going once.
Oh, we do have one. Well, maybe not. I thought I saw a hand.
Okay, we have 40 people attending the meeting. All right, seeing no request for public comment, I'll close that portion of the meeting.
I'm sorry, Bill.
sorry.
Chris Vella did raise his hand.
Oh, okay. Mr. Vella, do you want to be recognized?
Thank you, sir. Sorry about that. I was waving at you guys instead of keeping up my hand. So I wanted to comment on your item 6A. I've actually posted online some recommendations. I think I'm going to put my top one, and this would be for like the therefore part or your action part. The biggest problem that we've been seeing, and a lot of you guys have been appointed by Citro, Plant City, Joe Lapano, Hart, is that everybody freaks out when the highways or the interstate system projects are tied into the local road projects. I've encountered commissions who appointed the most liberal people on this board who still vote for TB Next. And the reason why is they're saying that if they don't support the TIP, with the interstate in it, they can't support the constituents that are not even remotely close to the highway system. So I recommend this board to separate any SIS projects, those that contain interstate projects, away from the separate road projects. So that way you can have a clear decision, because we know, and you guys said it in your resolution, that highways hurt communities of Black and brown and other minorities. And for 5 years, I've come to this board and asked to please stop this project, just like I've gone to the MPO board and wasted my time to say, please stop this project. And the way how the TIP and the decision process is made, it really just fails itself when it comes to make really good, true decision making. So I really just implore that you guys do this. The other thing really quickly is we got to remove any type of negative racist structures in our community. I can think of one at the gates of our city, and that's the Columbus statue. I am Native American, and it is very, very disgusting that we have something on Bayshore that I have to see every day when I was going to work or when I go exercise. It's ridiculous. So I think we need to look at not only Vision Zero, but reducing environmental impacts, but we also have to identify things that hurt culture and diversity in the neighborhood. And so, and my last comment, which is towards the end of the agenda, is CSX. One of the biggest problems that we've had with CSX is I see no countywide commissioner go to East Tampa to talk about it, right? And so everybody's all about having a fancy train, having a number of stops, but there's no discussion in East Tampa about land use. I don't even see it for Ybor as well. Again, like all these people who appointed you guys, they're not out there in the field or doing anything. It's quite disappointing. So I would say definitely make a strong recommendation for the MPO, right? To say like, we do want to do another SEIS. So they want to do a supplemental SIS and push it where we're going to have a very good neighborhood outreach so we can improve land use around the corridor. We can get everybody involved so we can get public support for this project. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, three minutes are up.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Appreciate you crammed a lot into your 3 minutes. Any other public comment? Rich, anybody else raise their hand?
I've not seen anybody, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. Seeing none, we'll close this portion of the meeting and we will move into members' interest. Is there anything that any of the members want to bring up as a topic for future discussion or consideration?
This is Ed Majewski. I did have something. These last 2 weeks, I've been participating in the virtual ITE annual meeting, and there was a session last week that I thought was really good, and it relates to the next item on the agenda. And I just wanted to call people's attention to the city of Portland actually has created a racial equity plan, and every one of their city departments has a component in it. And then secondly, the city of New Orleans has a plan called Moving New Orleans, the Road to Equitable Transportation. And I just wanted to point those out. I think it might be worth having the staff look at those and see if there are things that we can distill from those to apply to Hillsborough County.
Okay, good suggestion. Any other topics under members' interest?
Chief, Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Chair Roberts. Good morning, everybody. I do have a request of the committee that I'd like to request. We have several roads that are under interoperability agreements with between the county and the city, and there seems to be a disagreement as to who ultimately has decision power over, say, Bay Shore or Bay to Bay. As I understand it from sources at the city, the legal interpretation is not clear for citizens. I wonder if we could request, Rich, someone from the MPO to do inquiry so we could really understand who owns what and to whom citizens should make appeal if they want improvement or different use or to ask questions. Can we try to get to the bottom of that through this committee?
Okay.
This is Rich. Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you very much. Do I need to put anything in writing or should I do anything else other than pose that request?
I don't think so.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Christine. So noted. Any other members' interest items that the committee wants to bring up?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, who's that?
this is David Bailey.
Yes, David, you're recognized.
One of the things that I want to bring up, I believe it was maybe a year or two ago, there is supposed to be, and it was on the tip, and we had it removed off the tip. It was an SIS study that was supposed to be done on Baum Road and 301 out in Riverview. And I wanted to see if we could, I want to ask, how can we go about getting that back on a tip? That is still a 2-lane road. The high school will be opening up this year. And, you know, I think I think something should be done, or at least a study, so that we can possibly get that road widened. So I just want to ask for some guidance on as to how we go about getting that accomplished.
Okay, I think if I understand your request, you'd like the staff to coordinate and bring forth an explanation of how we can get that project back into the TIP or some priority funding. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Any other members' interest? I have one I want to bring forward if there are no others. In our meeting with the MPO and the recommendations that this committee made, there were several recommendations in the TIP that had to do with various sections of the interstate. The two that seemed to draw attention of the MPO board members were the construction or reconstruction of the interchange, and particularly the widening or the improvements of I-275 north of the interchange all the way up to Bears Avenue. I would like to ask if we can have an agenda item on our next meeting to further explore these, because there was some seeming confusion at the MPO area, and Secretary Gwynn, I think, made a very good explanation, very succinct explanation of what those were. Because those were recommendations that were made by this committee to the MPO, I'd like us to revisit this discussion and be sure we have clarity on it at the next meeting. So Rich, if you would follow up with that, I would appreciate it.
Sure.
Any other members' interest? Very good. We'll close that section of the meeting, and we'll move into item number 5, which is the approval of the meeting summaries for our various meetings. They are included in your meeting packet for June 10th, June 23rd, the subcommittee, and the July 15th workshop. Is there any discussion, or is there someone like to make a motion that we approve these summaries as submitted? I hear no discussion. Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve. This is Rick Richmond.
Lou Fritas.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. I think we'd like to do a roll call vote on this. So if the clerk would call the roll on the item number 5.
All right, Sky White. Ricardo Fernandez.
Yes.
Hoyt Prindle.
Aye.
David Bailey.
Aye.
Vivian Handy.
Yes.
Stephen Hollenkamp.
Yes.
Nicole Rice.
Yes.
Cheryl Thole. Christine DaCosta.
Yes.
Artie Fryer or Nancy Castellano. Bill Roberts.
Yes.
Edward Wojcicki.
Yes.
Don Skelton Jr.
Non-voting.
Yes.
Cliff Reese.
Yes.
Luciana Prida.
Yes.
Camilo Soto. Terrence Scott.
Yes.
Amy Espinosa.
Aye.
Richmond.
Yes.
And Barbara Kennedy Gibson. I have 15 yeses and no nos.
Thank you very much. The motion passes approving the minutes summaries of the various meetings. Move into the action items. The first item under number 6 is the resolution on racial discrimination. Mr. Pringle, you're going to bring this forward? Hoyt, are you on?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'm just trying to get my camera up here.
Okay, thank
Everybody
you.
can see me now. Good morning, everyone. Hoyt Prindle here, chair of the subcommittee on racial discrimination. Last month, our subcommittee met after the instruction of Chair Roberts to get together, discuss these things, and work out the language. I thought we had a pretty productive meeting. Dana and Christine and Cliff and David Bailey, I think everybody there on the committee all participated. I thought it was a fairly robust discussion. Not everybody agreed on every part of it, but we were able to work through consensus and really kind of went through the tedious task of going line by line, word by word, trying to come up with language that we thought was appropriate for the scope of the resolution in this particular instance. So I present the resolution to the committee and would ask that the committee approve the resolution as drafted and as approved by the subcommittee. With regards to Mr. Vella's comments, and I responded to him on Facebook and have heard his comments again this morning. I think Mr. Vella raises some valid things that need to be addressed, and my suggestion was that perhaps those could be addressed if needed with a separate resolution or a separate discussion from this. But my viewpoint is, after our last meeting and having a public meeting where we did actually have at least one member of the public participate and several different people kind of go through the tedious task, and we spent several hours working through to get this language to where it's at, that I would either ask the committee to approve or deny in full, and I would recommend voting in full to approve the resolution as drafted. I think that pretty much covers it. I don't think there's much more to say than that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Prindle. I'll take that as a motion to accept the resolution as drafted. Is there a second?
Second, David Bailey.
David, thank you. Rich, let me ask if it's necessary for us to read the resolution as drafted into the record, or can we simply record it as presented in the packet?
Mr. Chairman, I think you can record it as presented in the packet. I do have it up on the screen, so
Yes.
everybody.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to accept the draft resolution from the subcommittee. Is there discussion on the motion? I see several hands going up. Nicole Rice, Nikki, you're recognized. Nikki, I think you need to turn on your microphone.
Can you hear me?
Who's that?
It's me. Can
Nikki?
you hear me?
Yeah, okay, I can hear you.
Okay. I think my only concern with this is that this resolution could apply to any committee for anything with just the word transit inserted. I understand it's a resolution, just a draft resolution, but it doesn't actually talk about economic injustice and how we actually apply money to funding for projects, or what priorities are given in regards to where people live. And I think that's the crux of the issue, is that the investments, the things that we do in regards to transportation always come down to the money. And this doesn't address that at all. And I would just like to bring that to the table. I have no issue with it as an actual resolution, but it just seems very disconnected from the actual greater issue, which is economic problems that cause social injustice. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you, Nikki. Other comments? Cliff Reese, you're recognized.
Thank you. First, accolades to Hoyt for having gone through this line by line, word by word. Only comment, and something I also discussed briefly with Rich right after the meeting, is in the final paragraph, there's kind of a double use of the word of transportation to all modes of transportation. And, I would suggest that the words of transportation be deleted because it's redundant to the next all modes of transportation. That's my suggestion.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It says, we support ending racial discrimination in transportation planning, which includes ensuring more robust access then of transportation to all modes of transportation with a more intentional focus on the needs, et cetera.
So
And I
there
think
in
the
the
words
third,
of transportation are, are redundant.
so there in the third line, you're suggesting to remove the words of transportation.
Yes.
Got it. Any further? Hoyt, do you want to respond to that?
Quick comment. My recollection, Cliff, and you can correct me, but I wasn't keeping track of the tracked changes document, was that I thought it fixed that redundancy, because I know we addressed a few. So I don't know if that's just kind of a, like a scrivener's error type thing where we addressed it and it just didn't get put into this draft, or we really just didn't fix it. So I don't know if Rich and Dana would probably remember, but she's no longer on the committee. So
I think we just missed it in the course of going through this.
okay, well, I certainly wouldn't have any objection to fixing something that amounts to almost like a typo in this instance.
Okay. Thank you, Hoyt. Further comments on the motion to accept the draft?
Yeah, I have, this is Ed. I have
Mr. Fernandez, you
two,
had a hand up a moment ago. Mr. Fernandez.
Yeah, I don't mind if
Yeah,
Ed
go ahead.
wants to chime in, that's fine. I'll just be in the queue. That's okay.
well, okay, I had just two
Okay,
minor things.
Ed, you're recognized.
Okay, and I definitely am going to support this, but I just had two minor things. There's a place where it says, there's a paragraph that says racial discrimination has been evident in transportation planning, and transportation planning must change. Not all the things that are cited are a result of transportation planning, particularly, requiring African Americans to sit in the back of the bus was not that some MPO decided that. So my suggestion would be to change that to say transportation decision making, and that system must change. And then later on, when it cites the I-275 and I-4, I guess I'm not sure. It says these projects were used to divide American communities. And at this point, I don't know that I can, that I know what the reasons were back in the, 50s and 60s. I would say there's no doubt that it resulted in that, but I'm not sure. I would suggest changing were used to divide to resulted in. Anyway, those are my suggestions, and I'm going to approve the resolution, whatever.
Okay, thank you, Ed. What, you want to comment on those two suggestions? We may want to treat these as friendly amendments.
Sure. So briefly, with regards to the second issue with I-275 and I-4, that was something that was added in at the committee and specifically discussed. And if I recall, it was Dana that specifically emphasized the need to have the language in there as it was drafted, because I think there's plenty of evidence at this point, whether it be individuals like Robert Moses in New York, or the way that the Central Avenue Business District, for those of you who are aware of the history of Tampa, that was essentially destroyed by the freeway installation putting 275 in. And I think it's relatively known at this point that the freeways were put specifically in areas to box in minority communities and separate them from white or more affluent areas. So that's specifically why that language was used there. I understand that maybe would be some differences of opinion about that, but that specific issue was addressed. And then going back to the issue of planning, I think, and David or somebody else can jump in. I think the general thought there was that the use of planning was specific because not in every case that it was an that anyone was actively trying, at least in the last 10, 20, 30 years actively trying to discriminate against minorities, but almost the opposite effect, that by not addressing it or not taking it into account or not having those issues top of mind, that the effect thereof amounted to racial discrimination in many different instances. So that's my recollection of the discussion of the committee, for whatever it's worth.
Good.
Okay, those are good. Those are good responses. So I withdraw my concern.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Mr. Fernandez, you were in the queue.
Yeah, I was, but I think my questions have been answered by others already. So I'll mute myself again. Thanks.
Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? I can't see everyone's camera, so I'm going to have to ask Rich to help me if there are
He has a
other
question.
hands raised. Who's that?
It looks like Nikki has her hand up.
Nikki,
I
you
do.
recognize?
I would just, sorry, I'm having, my headphones aren't working on this one. Let me move yet again. I think it's a wonderful resolution. I just wonder if we could work in somewhere that these policies led to lack of, I don't see it in there, lack of economic opportunity and true community development. And I'm wondering if, Hoyt, there is a way that that could be pushed in. That's the only thing that I think is not fully addressed, and it kind of covers it.
Hoyt, you care to comment?
I think generally, right, my general thought is a lot of these suggestions are good ones that merit inclusion in the resolution. I think it's difficult for me on the fly to kind of go yay or nay, and that's why we had this stuck in committee for 3.5 hours or however long it took with us. So I would just say this as an overview. I look at this as a starting place, as I mentioned with Mr. Vella's discussion. You know, this doesn't have to be the last time we put a resolution forth on this type of topic. It doesn't have to be, if the chairman is so gracious, the last time we would have to have a subcommittee discussing these type of issues. But I would just say that, you know, the committee spent a lot of time really kind of putting effort and detail and discussion into these particular issues. And so my general viewpoint is, unless it's kind of something like Cliff mentioned, where we're maybe fixing a typo, I'm reluctant to just say, throw in these additional terms. But, you know, again, this is a full board that can easily outvote me, and you know, motions could be put forward to make changes as needed. But I think, if anything, this shows us that as a committee, we have the ability to do this again, and not just have this be the one time that we address this particular issue. Plus the fact that I think it's going to come back again before the board due to the fact that we're asking the MPO staff specifically to address action items related to the subject matter. And I think that's an area where perhaps the additional discussion would be strong here.
Okay, Hoyt, then I would say, as a living document, I make a motion that we move to approve.
I think we have a motion on the floor. Nikki, thank you, to approve the resolution as drafted. Is there any further discussion?
Is that with the amendment to remove the typo?
Rich, do you see any hands up? Pardon me?
Is that including removing the typo?
Yeah, I'm
Is
going to get to that.
Amendment?
Yes, yes, I'm going to include that, Cliff. I'd like to ask the board if there's any objection to the friendly amendment to clean up the typo in line 3 of the now therefore clause, which removes the words of transportation. Any objection to that friendly change? Any objection? Hearing none. Cliff, that's included in the motion without an amendment. My only comment is that I think this is represents a lot of hard work on behalf of the subcommittee, and I thank them for the hours that they did spend on it. I'm going to support the motion, but I do think that the whereas clauses tend to drift away from transportation issues Um, Admittedly, economic and cultural factors weigh on transportation. And I think that we need to realize that this committee's focus is on transportation issues, and our recommendations to the MPO need to focus as much as possible on transportation related issues. Having said that, any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, let's have a roll call vote on the motion, which we have a motion and a second to approve the draft resolution as presented with the one friendly amendment to remove the words "of transportation" in the whereas clause. If the clerk will call the roll, thank you.
Yes, White. Ricardo Fernandez,
Yes.
Hoyt Prindle,
Aye.
David Bailey,
Aye.
Vivian Handy,
Yes.
Stephen Hollenkamp,
Yes.
Nicole Rice,
Yes.
Cheryl Thole, Christine Acosta,
Yes.
Artie Pryor or Nancy Castellano, Bill Roberts,
Yes,
Ed Marzewski,
Yes.
Don Skelton,
Yes.
non-voting. Thank you.
Cliff Reese,
Yes.
Luciana Prida. Luciana,
I'm sorry, yes.
Camilo Soto.
That's a yes.
Oh, he's there now. Terrence Trott,
Aye.
Amy Espinosa,
Aye.
Rick Richmond,
Yes.
and Barbara Kennedy Gibson. I have 13 yeses and no nos.
I'm sorry, what was the total number of yeses? 13?
16.
15.
1-6.
Thank you. The
16.
motion passes unanimously. I want to thank the subcommittee for their time and diligence and effort in putting this together. We will forward it on to the MPO board, and I will make it part of my verbal report as well at the next MPO meeting. Thank you. We'll now move to the second of our two action items. This is the Transportation Improvement Program roll forward amendments. This is something we see each year. Vishaka, are you going to make this presentation?
Yes, sir. I'm going to be making the presentation today.
Thank
Can you
you.
hear me?
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you all CAC members. Today I'm going to be presenting the annual roll forward amendment. As Mr. Roberts said, this is a regular presentation we do every year. Can we move on to the next slide, please? I just wanted to give a quick update to those of you who might not be familiar with the TIP. Of course, the TIP is our annual document, and we keep it as a list of regionally significant projects, which are transportation-related projects within the metropolitan area of the Hillsborough County. What the TIP does is it identifies, prioritizes, it allocates the anticipated dollars, which funding for transportation projects for the next 5 years. We tend to make sure that this, the snapshot is received in April from FDOT, which is the tentative projects, and which is adopted by the board in June. The TIP goes into effect in October for the following fiscal year. Can we move to the next slide, please? The roll forward amendment is an addition which comes to the TIP after the TIP has been adopted. This is a process by which the budget for the unopened and the uncommitted project phases for the projects which have been in the adopted work program is requested to be moved forward to the next fiscal years. This happens because some of the projects that were programmed but not allocated in the previous year gets rolled forward automatically into the next year. the roll forward amendment reconciles the differences between the adopted TIP and the work program of the FDOT. And thus by doing so, we ensure that the first year of the TIP, our document, which is adopted in June, matches with the first year of the FDOT work program. So that's what this amendment is going to be doing today. Can we move to the next slide, please? So I do have the detailed summary and the list of the projects in your CAC packet as well, but I wanted to quickly bring to you the list of the 14 projects which had been in the roll forward amendment request for us. And if you can see here, I have given the FPN numbers, and each project gets a new amendment number. So when it goes into the TIP, this will be the new projects which are in the TIP currently. And you can see that the difference between the what was before and what was adopted is the amendment cost change. Some of the projects are new projects, and hence they don't have any funds in the adopted FY21. So the next slide also shows this is a continuation of the 14 projects. And I can show you a sample of how the comparative report shows in the next slide. So this is a comparative report. Why I brought it to you is to show that as of the adopted date, you can see that the top half of the table is the project when it was adopted. And just as a sample, it gives you what is the project details and the amount. And if you can see in the amendment section of it in the bottom half, it shows that it has an amendment number and what funds has been added. So this time for this project, the ACSU advanced construction funds have been added for the first year of the TIP. And hence, this is how all the projects look like, and the comparative report is there in the packet also. So with this, if you don't have any further questions, I do request that the board approves this and recommends it to the MPO board for approval.
Thank you, Vishaka. This is a process that we do each year, as most of the members know. By my count, there are 13 numbered amendments plus some other additional items to roll forward funds from one fiscal year to the next. So we have a recommendation from the staff that we would move this on to the full MPO board. Are there questions of Vishaka before we entertain a motion? Christine, you're recognized.
Thank you. I just wonder, is it possible to use the view on the presentation of presenter view? Because all those line items are very, very hard to see when they are, just 10% of a WebEx screen. So if you could, thanks. Okay, appreciate that. And note to all presenters today to use the biggest possible viewing space. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Mr. Fernandez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to confess, I've been a little busy the last few weeks, and to be perfectly honest, I have not delved into this agenda the way I normally would. So that's the confessional piece of my Catholic schoolboy upbringing. The other piece is I am very circumspect about approving anything that I haven't dug into the weeds about, and I haven't on this. So I'm curious, is there a timeline concern here that absolutely requires us to act on this action item today, or could it be put forward 30 days to allow a little bit more time to review? And just to spin off of what Christine just said, I may not be the only one who hasn't dug into this real deeply. And frankly, trying to analyze these things on the fly is a little tough. So again, admitting my own shortcoming, I'm not prepared to approve this the way it is at this point because I haven't done my homework. But I am wondering if there would be any harm done by pushing it off 30 days for action.
Thank you. Vishaka, you got to respond to that.
I was under the impression that this has to be adopted before September. Although I would defer it to Rich if he could answer that question for me, please.
Rich?
Well, I would say that ordinarily we might be able to push this off. The new TIP does go into effect October 1st. So the problem is that the MPO meeting after your September meeting isn't until October 14th. And so that pushes us beyond the start date for the new fiscal year. So these projects would be in abeyance until that point. Further, I believe the MPO's meeting for October 14th is planned as a workshop to focus on managed lanes, which is also going to be coming to you all in October for your October meeting as well. So I'm not sure the MPO is going to have the opportunity to have consider action items. So I would say that if there's any way that you all could take action on it today, I guess that would be preferable. I would also point out that these projects, for the most part, are not new to the TIP. They were in what was considered by the committee and the MPO board back in June. So I think, you know, I would just urge that if there's any way the MPO or the committee could forward this to the MPO, that would be great. We can, you know, review the individual projects. If there's any questions, we do have DOT representatives available to answer them. So that, I guess that would be my response.
Thank you.
Hey, Rich, this is Sarah here. I was just going to say we were requested by FDOT to have this process by September 30th. And that also includes a couple weeks to send this back to the feds for their final review as well. So if we could stay on that timeline as much as possible would be the best.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other questions about the presentation before we entertain a motion?
I have, this is Lou Prida. I have a question. As a roll forward, have these been approved in the past?
Yes, sir. This is a.
Okay, so this is just, it's carryover from prior years. And
this project is for the list of the projects what we received this year is for this, it corresponds to this year TIP. Usually we receive a list of similar projects which were not, that's what I mentioned in the earlier slide, that the projects which were proposed but were not approved in the TIP gets rolled forward and gets added to this as a roll forward amendment. So like adding what Rich said, most of these projects were in the priority. And if at all there's another project which is only adds, there was any phase they were waiting on, that's why it's coming as a roll forward amendment.
Okay.
So I think, Lou, that's a great question. I think I would like to ask Vishaka to just clarify that further. These are all, we are rolling forward projects and the amounts of money associated with each of those projects that were unexpended in the previous fiscal year. Is that correct?
Yes, I think that's how it comes. Either the phases have been changed or the projects or any particular fund has been added to a particular phase or it's been moved around. So it could be a combination of that, or it could be just funds placed for to start a project and as a placeholder. So sometimes it comes like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Stephen.
Vishaka, so can you help me make sure I understand this? The column on the far right, amendment cost change, that's really the additional funding that we're approving for these projects. Is that right?
No, sir. The blue column, if you can go back to the previous slide, please, once again. It has the titles of the slide. Yes, so if you can see, the amended total is the light blue one to the near the description is where the funds have changed, and the amendment cost change is where the effect has come. So if the project was not there when the TIP was approved, that's when it says not applicable. And then, for example, the Sulphur Springs project, just the funds were only moved around from 1 year to another year. So there was no cost change. It was just moved around funds. So it's still as an amendment.
So then for that top line, it's already been approved 258,761,432, and now we're adding for about $500,000. Is that right? Or are we approving a $250 million project?
No, you're only approving the difference, the 457,000. So in effect, after the adoption with the entire project, the total cost, it's only changing the TIP by about 1%.
Okay, and so then all of these projects seem relatively small in terms of what we're approving, the amendment that we're approving, except the second to last one, which is a new $55 million project. So that feels like the one if Rick is going to dive into any of these, that's the one to focus on, because that's the big ticket item here. That's pretty much the whole, 90% of the total increased funding comes from that one project. Is that right?
Yes, and I do have some details from it, what FDOT provided for me. This is actually a grant which was awarded to Port Tampa Bay. It is a combination of local funds and National Freight Program funds awarded through a grant for expanding the container capacity at the Hooker's Point by 60%. So it was one of the top priorities for the port project. It just got approved and awarded right now. So that's why you see that difference.
Okay.
And I would say that even though we don't have a representative from the report on our committee, my conversations with port representatives is they're very happy to get this grant and certainly would want to move forward now that it's available.
Mr. Chairman.
Thanks.
Yes, who is that?
This is Rich. Bill, I want to let you know you actually do have a representative. Don Skelton Jr. is the appointee from the.
Right. Thank you. Any further questions on the presentation and about the recommendation? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the recommendation from staff for the transportation improvement roll forward amendments. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Mr. Hollenkamp makes a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Ed.
Mr. Mazursky, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the recommendation to move these forward to the MPO board? Hearing no discussion, if the clerk would call the roll, we'll move this item forward.
Guy White. Ricardo Fernandez.
No.
Hoyt Prindle.
No.
David Bay. David.
Make sure you're not muted.
There he is. David, are you a yay or a nay? A yay? Okay. Vivian Handy? Yes. Stephen Hollenkamp?
Yes.
Nicole Rice?
No.
Cheryl Cole? Christine Acosta?
No.
Artie Fryer or Nancy Castellano? Bill Roberts?
Yes.
Edward Marzetsky?
Yes.
Don Skelton Jr.?
Yes.
Cliff Reese?
Yes.
Luciano Prida?
Yes.
Camilla Soto,
Yes.
Terrence Trott,
Yes.
Amy Espinosa,
Yes.
Rick Richmond. Oh,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
Rick, do you vote?
Yes.
Okay. And Barbara Kennedy Gibson. All right, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 no's. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 12 yeses. 16 total votes.
Thank you. The motion passes 12-4. Thank you, Vishaka, for the presentation. And if
Thank
there are
you.
committee members, who want to have a discussion further about any of these amendments, we'll encourage you to bring them to the next meeting. But we'll forward this recommendation on to the MPO board. I'm
Thank you
sorry,
so much.
Vishaka. Thank you. Okay. That will conclude our 2 action items on the agenda. The next item is the first of 2 status reports. This will be an expressway project update, and I'm not exactly sure who's going to make this presentation.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that would be Anna Quinones from the Tampa Hillsborough Expressway Authority.
Good. Anna, if you're available, you're recognized.
Hi, I'm available. This is Anna Quinones. I'm a project manager with the planning department here at the Tampa Hillsborough Expressway Authority. If you would like to go ahead and move to the next slide. I'm basically going to just give an update, a high-level overview of some of the projects that we have going on right now. And I'm going to start with our current construction projects that are underway. Next slide. Our biggest right now is the Salmon West Extension. Next slide. At this point, we're over 75% complete with this project, with a current expected opening timeframe in mid-2021. Here's a view of the viaduct with the Extrados fins, with one of them painted as they will appear after completion of the viaduct. Next slide. We'll also have aesthetic lighting that can change color for different themes or events. These photos were taken a few weeks ago. The contractor did a test lighting of the pier and the fin, so we could all see what it would look like, get an idea of what it'll look like when it's finished. Also, I don't have a slide for it, but I will also say we have an REL aesthetic lighting project, and the goal is to have that up and functional by February 2021.
Anna?
Uh-huh.
Would you explain what REL means?
Oh, yeah, I apologize. It's the reversible express lanes. So they're running in the east from downtown to I-75.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I also have a question about what are the project limits for this phase?
For the Salmon West Extension?
Yes.
That is from Gandy to Dale Mabry, I'm sorry, from the Gandy Bridge to the Dale Mabry-Gandy interchange with the Salmon Expressway.
Okay, thank you.
So it runs through the median of Gandy from the bridge to the Dale Mabry-Gandy interchange.
Okay, thank you.
And Sarah? Sarah?
Bill, I think somebody wants recognition.
Who's asking for recognition?
This is David. I was just going to ask if we can make that a little bit bigger. So if we could zoom in a little bit.
Sure. Let's see what we can do.
How's that?
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay.
Okay, next slide. Okay, and here are some of the numbers showing what is going into the Salmon West Extension project. It's an overview. I'm not going to go over all of it, but it's just a quick view of you know, seeing that there's a lot going into it. Next slide. Excuse me. So our next current construction project underway is the South Salmon Safety Project. Next slide. This is a before view of what the median looked like. The safety project will enhance driver safety by constructing a concrete barrier wall in the median of the expressway between the Hillsborough River and Himes Avenue, which is basically where the extension begins. Next slide. And this says current, but it is a bit of an outdated view. This is a view of the construction work that was going on. The barrier wall is being put in place to prevent crossover crashes. And the road is being paved to the center, which allows for larger shoulders for disabled vehicles, road rangers, and first responders. You can go to the next slide, please. And this is a rendering of what it'll look like when it's complete, and the expected completion date is mid-September, so it's not that far off. Next slide. So we also have quite a few PD&E studies going on right now. Next slide.
And could you explain again, I'm sorry, what you mean by PD&E study, just for those who might not know?
Yes, I'm sorry. It's Project Development and Environment Study. It's basically the study that happens before a project can really start, before design, so that you can evaluate different alternatives, basically for a project. It also meets requirements, local and federal requirements as well. Occasionally, we're not doing federal though. So this is the evaluation area from Himes Avenue, basically at the Salmon West Extension, to Whiting Street in downtown Tampa. The primary purpose of this study is to evaluate the needs, costs, and effects of constructing improvements that will increase capacity on the South Salmon Expressway. The study will also identify solutions to frequent congestion at entry and exit points along the Salmon Expressway. We're looking at ways to reduce travel times during the morning and evening rush, and evaluate strategies to eliminate conflict points and reduce crashes. We're also evaluating noise walls for each of the potential alternatives. It includes the need, the cost, and the constructability of those walls for each alternative that we look into. Next slide. This is a look at the schedule. It's an overview. It's still on track to finish in April of 2021. I will say, as you'll see on the next slide, the public workshop that's up there has been pushed. So next slide, please. We're looking at doing an alternatives webinar in September 2020. We'll host a virtual town hall to launch our website application and discuss the alternatives. The website application will include updates of the findings of the study, including noise and safety. An in-person information session is pending, given the uncertainties stemming from the pandemic. At the conclusion of the study, we'll again host a virtual town hall and an information session to show the preferred alternative and final recommendations of the study. After that, we'll decide if the project can move forward into the design phase and then construction. Costs will be estimated as part of the study and will be refined as we progress. So next slide. Sorry. This is the project area for our Whiting Street PD&E. This study is evaluating extending Whiting Street and Washington Street through to Meridian Avenue and the relocation and reconfiguration of ramps 6A and 6B. And those ramps are the ones that are in the the lower left or lower west side of this highlighted area. It's the curved ramp that goes to Florida and the ramp that goes to Channelside. The extension of Whiting Street is a commitment from THEA to the city of Tampa related to the Salmon Expressway Reversible Express Lanes project. Once Ardent Mills, the flour mill that's over there in Channelside, actually it's closer to the Water Street area, vacates the property, the CSX rail lines currently serving the flour mill will be removed to allow for the realignment and extension of Whiting Street and Washington Street. The purpose of this project is to improve safety, accessibility, and circulation along the Salmon Expressway and throughout the downtown and Channel District. The extensions of Whiting and Washington Streets will provide capacity and operational improvements while complementing the city's street grid network. Significant development throughout the city and Channel District alongside the anticipated traffic demand on the Salmon Expressway has further spurred the need to improve downtown accessibility and circulation options, as well as enhance the safety and traffic flow along the Salmon Expressway. And this study has required a lot of coordination with the city and SPP, particularly for that rapidly developing Water Street area. That is ongoing coordination. Next slide. This is a look at the schedule for that study. It began in July of 2019 and is scheduled to be completed by December 2021. The first public workshop for that is scheduled for January 2021. Next slide, please. All right, and this is our Salmon East PD&E project or study. It is part of the first phase in a 3-phase project to improve capacity, safety, and operations from downtown to I-75. Depending on the needs, the future improvement is anticipated to include adding an additional lane to the reversible express lanes, from Palm River Road to I-75 and additional mainline lanes of the expressway from Brewerine to I-75. We'll also look at slip ramp access to and from the REL to make better use of the underutilized capacity of the reversible express lanes. Other operational improvements to ramps and interchanges will also be evaluated. Next slide. This is a look at the schedule for that study. Began in March of 2020 and is expected to wrap up in May of 2022. Next slide. Nebraska Avenue PD&E will look at a relatively small but significant section of Nebraska Avenue to evaluate operational improvement alternatives between roughly Kennedy and just north of Cass. This is being done to look at ways to improve traffic flow and efficiency after work on Twigs has been completed. The Twigs design build, which is also shown on this map, that project includes adding an additional right turn lane from the REL onto Twigs. The kickoff for this study will take place next week and is expected to last about 2 years, so we don't actually have a full schedule for that one yet. Next slide, please. We also do several community enhancement projects. Next slide. This is a quick view of some of the community enhancement projects we've completed so far. You can see there. Next slide, please. This is our most recent completed one. This was recently completed, actually, just I think it was June it was officially finished. This is under the overpass on Morrison in Hyde Park. It's one of our community enhancement projects in which we work with the neighborhood association to make aesthetic improvements within our right-of-way. So basically what we do in these cases is a neighborhood association or community group can come to us and request that we do some sort of aesthetic enhancement in the overpass areas. And they submit an application, and we work with them to determine what they would like to have done, and some sort of arrangement. The arrangement is usually that we can put up the capital to build it. We request that they maintain it. And any neighborhood group can come to us with a request. We just usually have to have the funds programmed and stuff like that. But you know, we've gone through this process a few times with the community. Next slide. We also have here in downtown our Salmon Greenway. We're currently finishing a design for enhancements between Florida and Jefferson. And this design will further enhance the pedestrian connection between the west side of downtown and the Water Street developments, particularly for between the USF medical facilities. Construction has been pushed to fiscal year 22 due to the pandemic budget constraints caused by the pandemic. But I don't know if everybody's familiar with the Greenway, but we do have a multi-use trail that follows the expressway from Riverwalk in the east over to 19th Street in Adamo in the, I'm sorry, from the west to the east. My apologies. And we have a few pocket parks and things like that. We do have this has been a phased program. So we do have scheduled enhancements in our work program for later years as well. The map shown here, you can see the yellow is the one that is programmed next. In the orange, we have the small sort of gateway park, if you will, planned as part of the Whiting Street project, which will come later. And then further out, we have design programmed to begin in fiscal year 2022 for the area that's circled in the purple. And then further up, we have our Adamo section, which that's a bit on hold. We don't have a solid plan for that yet. We're still working with the community, with the Ybor area, and kind of trying to see basically what is happening around there. There was a lot of stuff that was kind of up in the air. So we're open and still talking about it. We just don't have anything planned for it yet. Next slide. And that concludes my VIA update. I'll take any questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Obviously, a lot going on with the Expressway Authority. Questions regarding the presentation? Nikki Rice, you're recognized.
Thank you. I apologize. I look so horrible. I feel really not well today, so apologies on camera. I wanted to know on the section with I have a two-part question, but the CSX tracks, if you could go back to that slide.
It should be the Whiting slide. Well, I mean, you can see them there.
Okay. The part that actually circles a portion that you're removing. Okay, so on this slide, is it just the pull in that's being removed or the flow through that's being removed? What portion of the CSX tracks here is being removed under this project?
That whole spur.
I think the question is from where to where. Obviously, it's the spur feeding the flour mill.
Correct, and I have to see how far north. So it'd be, there's an area that's at Twiggs, so from Twiggs down to Cumberland. It's only used currently for to service the mill.
Is it It's a shame. Are you able to circle on here on this visibly, like where this portion is and how it affects flow through for CSX?
Can you see my cursor?
Yeah, I can, Rich.
Yeah. So I think Twig Street is here,
Right.
a little bit off this map, but approximately here, down to Cumberland.
Okay. Interesting. I'll come back to that later. My other question is in regards to, and this has been an issue that I brought up before in our meetings. If you go back to the second slide of the presentation. Over and over, I've brought up.
This one?
That one works. That gives a good idea. I just want to share from a community perspective how many people have come to me and no longer will take the Gandy Bridge or Gandy whatsoever to cross over to St. Petersburg. The scope and size, it's too late, it's built now. But the effect of this on this community, the visibility while driving is so spatially confusing to the eye due to the size of these of the pillars. It is almost like an aqueduct system. It looks like you're in Rome with an aqueduct running down the middle of an actual street that used to be at one point a commercial district, that now there's no turn in to get in and out of businesses. Businesses are no longer visible. So when you were referring to the lighting system, these LEDs that can actually change tones, please tell me that you're not planning on putting these colored lights underneath this where drivers are coming through, and that this is simply for the bridge or on the top portion? Or are you planning on utilizing colored LED lights underneath said bridge here or extension?
There are plans for the piers to be uplit.
Okay. I'm very concerned about visibility on this as of right now. I cannot actually see without getting vertigo driving down this road. The idea of the lights moving from blue to this or whatever with LED sounds like a massive safety concern to me, and not well lit at all. And I am very concerned about using that for decorative lighting versus enhanced lighting for safety.
Okay. I will bring that concern back
I mean,
to them.
it is nice to have, decorative lighting maybe on the top so you see something during an event, but the actual visibility issues right now on this, it's intense when you're trying to drive underneath there.
Okay, good point. Thank you, Nikki. Any other questions regarding the presentation from Thea?
This is Vivian. I have a comment on the lighting as well.
Go ahead.
Okay, I agree with Nikki about the potential distractions, but I have an issue with aesthetic lighting across the board. I think it's a waste of tax dollars and also energy. I think we have better things that we can spend our tax dollars on than trying to make a bridge column look pretty. It adds to light pollution, localized environmental impacts, and overall more energy consumption. And I think that clean air and a natural night sky is more aesthetically pleasing than colored lights on concrete poles. And again, I think it's a waste of tax dollars when we already have limited funds. So that's my comment. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Vivian. Anna, do you care to comment on any of that, or do we want to continue with questions?
No, that's fine. We're a toll authority, so we don't operate off of tax dollars, but I do think that your comment on light pollution is valid, and I will absolutely discuss, I'll talk to the team basically, how are they looking at how many lumens this is putting out, basically. How bright is it? Because I know that they don't want to be invasive, but I will bring this up as something that is important.
And to address, to follow up, so it's not tax dollars, it's based on tolls. But I'd still rather have my toll dollars spent on, say, greenways, and not artificial.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vivian. Any other questions regarding the presentation?
Chair
Mr.
Roberts, I have a
Fernandez.
question.
I'm sorry, who's that?
It's Christine.
Christine, go ahead. I'm sorry, I can't see your picture.
Oh, I thought I was visible. Am I now? Am I now visible?
You're
Okay,
on.
cool.
You're
Thanks.
just off my screen. Go ahead.
Hi, Anna. It's Christina Costa. And I wanted to thank you for your presentation, but I do have several points that I'm going to run through pretty quickly. I wanted to pick up where Nikki left off in terms of the present day Gandy. I've been watching this project and requesting since before funding that we that Thea look out for during construction and even plan to build facilities that would make the Gandy more walkable and bikeable, and none of that was heeded. So the construction process has been very, very damaging to the surface level, where people are still forced in a lot of cases, especially along a commercial corridor, to walk and bike to work or to get groceries. So I just ask you to keep an eye out and maybe report back to us exactly what's happening there. This project got a lot of support from the small business community down there, especially the South Tampa Chamber of Commerce spoke publicly many times, every time the Gandy project was up for discussion. And the premise for supporting this project and its enormous disruption was that Gandy was to be relieved of all the pass-through traffic. So serving MacDill Air Force Base for everybody coming over from Pinellas into the urban core. They no longer need to be on Gandy, and we could make Gandy much more neighborhood-like, much more walkable and friendly at a surface level by lifting all that traffic off of the cut-through traffic, basically people that are just using it to get from point A to point B in distant on a long drive. So I just want to remind you, Anna, I think this was even before your time, that was sort of the basis. And I would like to ask you to follow up with us on what is the coordination after construction to make sure that Gandy Boulevard is in fact improved in all the ways that it was predicted to be and promised to be after you guys vacate the space. Specifically, I'm interested in some numbers because this was also promised to be a major lift for the people that would go from Apollo Beach, get off downtown to avoid tolls, and then take Bayshore to MacDill Air Force Base. So Bayshore, the use of Bayshore is very contentious over many years as a highway, and I'm interested in knowing what kind of numbers can we expect when this is done that will come off of Bayshore as a result of this big new highway with uninterrupted traffic flow. I just want to say out loud for the record that relative to the downtown Thea projects, Meridian remains very high speed relative to being a border to a very bustling emerging community of Channel District and Water District. Meridian, you may recall from Paula Flores's report on the speed problems, that Meridian is one of our high speed, high crash corridors, and part of that is because it feeds the Salmon through the urban core, and it just feels like an on-ramp every inch of it feels like an on-ramp instead of a city street that should be slow and feel comfortable for people to occupy. Those are my key points. I could probably go on for a while, but Mr. Chairman, I realize others may want to speak and that Anna may want to respond, so I'll go back on mute. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. I suspected you'd have some comments. Anna, any follow-up you want to make, or should we move on?
Sure. No, I can follow up with a couple of items. Gandy is also an FDOT road. So we would need to work with them to actually make Gandy itself more walkable and bikeable. I will say that, and it's in a small section, and I do apologize for that, but we are improving there's a park next to the bridge where the viaduct begins. And we are improving that, and there is a trail over there. And at least for that part of the trail, we will be improving that area as well. It's a city trail. So it would require more interagency coordination to really work on other parts of Gandy as well. Not saying it won't happen. I'm just saying it'll require more coordination that may not happen as a result of this project right now. As far as getting numbers to you to show improvement on Gandy as well, it will take a little bit of time to show, I'm sure. I mean, we have to, wait until it's finished, but I'm sure that is something we'll be interested in as well. So any information that we get, any studies that we do, any traffic analysis that we do, we'd be happy to share, whatever the result is. So there's that. And I know that some of our other studies that we're doing do look at ways to encourage riders to stay on for the full trip. And particularly, you're going to have people getting off at downtown. The argument for drivers to get off in downtown to cut through on Bayshore, I think that those would mostly come from the east. We've done traffic studies to show, and it has not shown that it is really all that many. But regardless of that, we do want to encourage our drivers to take the full trip, not do a cut through. So some of our other studies are looking at ways to encourage that as well. And then also, as far as Meridian goes, we have had a couple of meetings with Paula Flores and Gina Torres as well to coordinate on making Meridian safer. We have our GEC also doing a safety audit as well, and looking at bringing the speed limit down, things like this. So we're not ignoring it. We are working on trying to make that area as safe as possible as well.
Thank you.
I think that's it.
I have a question as well.
Let me just comment. I think I'd like to reiterate Christine's request that Anna or someone from THEA come back to us at a fairly early date with an update on the status of the coordination with the FDOT to make Gandy more walker, bike, and traffic friendly. I think that was a huge selling point for the community. I think this committee has a responsibility to follow up. So Anna, if you would put a star by that request, I would appreciate a report whenever it's possible. Yes, who else had a question regarding Lou Prida?
I question or comment on Nikki's question with regards to CSX. I want to make sure that the flow through doesn't ever get cut off. Representing the business interests, I fully support rail, light rail, and the connectivity, especially with the extension that they're talking about, the trolley car up to Palm Avenue. I've always felt like the CSX line was a critical piece because it actually connects all the way. People don't realize it. I think it connects all the way to Oldsmar, all the way around up to USF, and so you could really connect the community up. So I want to make sure that flow through goes. I live downtown, so I hear the train coming through all the time on Twig Street. But I just want to reiterate that's representing business interests. That is very, very important going forward.
Thank you, Lou. Rick Fernandez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm off mute, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Appreciate it. First of all, just briefly on the Gandy spur, I don't think anyone should be surprised that the Department of Transportation and THEA could get together to come up with something that, for all intents and purposes, helps to destroy a neighborhood. This is, as I'm looking at this picture here on the screen, that's just an atrocity. How the community laid down and allow that to happen, I don't know. But as somebody said before, it's already built. So hopefully you can figure out a way to put some lipstick on a pig and make that actually look like a people-friendly environment, because now it's not. So that's, you're talking about spending $500,000, or was it $500 million, $500 million, in all of these projects. Whatever of that went to this, that's atrocious to me. Having said that, I have a couple of questions with regards to the PD&E studies, the South Salmon and the East Salmon. Given my experience with PD&E studies, I think I understand what's happening here. You're calling them capacity projects, which mean that somewhere in a boardroom at THEA, you guys have already decided you want to add lanes to this, and now you have to have studies to support it. So I want to understand what is it, why is it, what are the issues currently facing us that cause THEA to believe that we need to slap more lanes on these sections of the Salmon, number one. And number two, this committee has recommended traffic counts be done to determine and make some prognostication as to what the likely demands are in the post-COVID environment, with people presumably working more from home and the like. So I'm curious if there are any issues of that sort that are even being discussed, and if so, are there any actions being taken to address the potential needs and demands relative to our work at home paradigm shift? That's it for now.
Thank you, Rick. Anna, you want to address either of those questions?
I would say join us for our September webinar for the South Salmon PD&E, and I can't currently speak to the numbers, how we're incorporating numbers. It's as far as the work from home or the change in traffic, I just don't know enough about that yet. So I'll have to talk to some people about that.
Good. Thank you. If you would seek to get an answer to Rick's questions, particularly with regard to the impact of work from home on traffic flows, I think that would be of interest to the committee. Christine, you had another comment?
I do. Two things. Rick Fernandez, I want to, you asked how the communities kind of laid down to accept this project. Much of it was hinged on the promise of beautifying Gandy at the surface level and making it more friendly for small businesses. So I understand Anna's reply that takes function, cross-jurisdiction coordination, but I would like to very boldly go on record and say that I believe THEA should be a leader in this effort and not just defer to not our problem, that's a state road or what have you. So I just want that on the record that There was just a lot of promises and a lot of visionary talk about what would be behind this project in terms of Gandy. Anna, could you please look at the slide, pull up the slide of the Salmon Greenway, please?
I can do that.
All right, Rich. I just want to point out to the committee, the Salmon Greenway, when you see it, I encourage all of you to actually go on the ground and walk through this. There's been a recent walk audit, meaning close examination and documentation, and I'm glad that there are improvements that are planned. However, if you see look at the green line there and how jagged that is, it rather than being a smoother, more contiguous pathway, it was chopped apart in lots of bits during the construction process, probably for cost savings. And what that means is it's really not bikeable at all. Unless you are a circus unicycle riding on a high wire, you cannot balance through all these turns. And so it is a multi-use trail by definition, but I just want our committee to recognize that bicyclists don't use this unless they're children, with parents for one block at a time. The crossings that go mid-block are not marked. Motorists do not have to stop there right now. So there's just a lot of stuff that needs to change. And I don't want this to be construed as any sort of gift to bicyclists, because most bicyclists, I should say commuters and those who have, are actually utilitarian riders are not going to be on this. So I just want the committee to hear my interpretation of that greenway as is. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Further comments or questions on the presentation? David Bailey, you have a question? Terrence is next.
Yeah, I just have one quick question with respect to the flour mill. When is that scheduled? When is the flour mill scheduled to vacate out of that space and open that whole area up? Anna?
That's a good question. I do need to double check to see if that time frame has changed. I know it was 2022 was supposed to be by the latest. There's a lot happening in that area with the Water Street development as well. So they're looking for it to leave just as much as we are.
And I'm sorry, go ahead, Anna, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask if you could go back to that slide just so I can see the area, Rich, please.
Okay. Can you see that?
Yep. So in the area where the flour mill is, with the PD&E study, is there anything particular that they're looking to put there now to say this will work there, or are they just trying to develop a plan to see what will work in that space?
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
Once they remove the flour mill. With the PD&E study. Go ahead, Rich.
What's going to replace the flour mill?
A combination of things.
Yeah.
So we will be cutting Whiting through, so it'll actually join to the rest of downtown. Same thing with Washington. Washington will also be joined to the rest of downtown. And then there will be development happening, like on the blocks, basically. We're not doing the development, we're doing the road.
Okay. And that's fine.
Different geometry and things like that that'll work.
Yeah. And Anna, sorry for calling you Sarah earlier. Thank you for the information.
Oh, okay.
Terrence Trott, you had a question?
I did, thank you. Anna, for the south portion, the diagram showed the median, but one of my concerns, I just care about the aesthetics also was, I want to know, are any trees like supposed to be removed from that area, and will they be replaced somewhere else? Because just having that, you know, that long concrete barrier is kind of not that appealing looking, I would say. And I know there's some comments from other folks talking about, you know, use of funds for aesthetics, but I think trees are nice.
I agree. I like trees too. I know that there's some that stick up. We're not, you know, all the grass is being taken out, and that's, you know, mostly because they've decided that the concrete barrier is the safest way to go. Yeah, so
All right, so were there any trees there previously? I mean, in that span, I can't, it's just that grass.
yeah, I'm trying to think. No, they're not in the median there.
All right, because just as in general, if we were removing some, I'd like to replace them somewhere else if possible.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Oh, the other part was with the greenways, just a general comment. I mean, there's been a lot of progress over the years. I understand that they're not perfect, but it's, you know, I hate to say it's better than nothing, but it is improving, and I think there is room for more improvement, and I look forward to that continuing. But it's excellent in concept, and I think for the portions that, you know, are beneficial or usable to people in that area, it's a good thing. So.
Yeah. Okay, good. And I will make another comment about the Greenway. It isn't necessarily the best for bicyclists. I've biked it and it's not the most continuous, but I think that we understand that it does get heavier pedestrian usage, but I do think that we want to connect it to some of the other networks that we have down there. Because there are several other areas. And I know that we're in discussion with SPP now as well about having some connectivity on Cumberland to allow for greater usage and connectivity that way over to Meridian, where it might be more comfortable for bicyclists as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I don't see any other hands raised. Anna, thank you for bringing this wide-ranging report on the Expressway Authority to us. I think we've raised some questions that we'll look forward to getting your responses back as soon as you can, particularly with regard to the Gandy street level coordination with FDOT. So, and I will say that it's my impression that the Expressway Authority is taking the lead in coordinating the redevelopment, if you want to call it that, of the Gandy area. So thank you again for coming. Appreciate the presentation very much.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is a status report on the Tampa Bay Next Update West Shore Safe Trip process. Are we ready for that one, Rich? Yep.
Yes, I believe Margaret Kublin's with Florida DOT will be presenting this item.
Good. Welcome, Margaret.
Yes.
Good to have you with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts, Chairman Roberts. I trust everyone's doing well this morning. I appreciate this is the first time I'm actually presenting to this committee. In this capacity, I've only been with DOT for the last year and a half. And I come to you as a traffic engineer with more than 30 years of experience. However, just before you throw me under the bus on that one, I have been involved with the Congress of New Urbanism for since the early 90s. I am a very dedicated urban designer. I focus on moving people and providing safety and mobility. And I'd like to highlight that Chairman Roberts wrote suggested earlier, or not suggested, but stated about how transportation is so important. And transportation strongly influences our quality of life, including safety, mobility, health, and economic vitality. So I want you to know that you have a friend on the inside, so to speak. I do have people on the phone that were very excited that I decided to come to the department. It's been a great honor to serve. And I am pushing to look at transportation in a new way. There's a lot to navigate. So with this, I recently became the program manager for the Campus West Shore Interchange in regard to establishing the transportation management plan. And that is a requirement for a project like this for from FHWA. And it is all about safety and mobility. And so that is my focus, and that's my role. And fortunately, we have some really great people on our within our organization. So next, please. So as you know, last fall, it was announced, Governor DeSantis was able to announce that we're funding a $1.4 billion project. It covers the extents as shown, where we have from the Howard Franklin Bridge all the way east over to the Hillsborough River. And then there's that stem that goes north up towards the Veterans Expressway. It's a very large project. We're spreading it out, staging it in ways that are consumable we can get it constructed by multiple contractors. And right now we're way ahead of the game, as we manage how we're going to approach the safety and mobility of this area over the course of construction. Next slide, please. So why Safe Trip? So Safe Trip is, as I mentioned, the transportation management plan. There are a lot of constraints. We're going to build this under traffic, which makes it very challenging. We have a commitment to leaving as the same number of lanes in all directions during the course of this. And in the meantime, we're looking to see what else we can get done in order to help facilitate the mobility of everyone that passes through this interchange. It's very complex. There's a lot of bridges, there's a lot of viaduct sections, and it's very complex, but we have a lot of opportunity in order to help preserve the businesses, as we just talked about with Gandy. I think that's a really good lessons learned that we may want to go ahead and have that conversation as well. We have a lot of partners, and I'll bring that up a little bit later. Next, please. Okay, Safe Trip is our acronym. Safe being safety is definitely at the priority, and transportation management plan. We've branded it as Safe Trip because we have broken our program into 4 elements. We have the traffic management, we have the regional demand management, we have innovation, and we have public engagement. Next, please. In the spring, we had brought together several partners and a lot of the contributors to this, and we established what our vision is. What do we want to see as we develop this plan, and what we want to use this as our tool to guide with our contractors through the duration of the construction. So we established our vision of making sure that Safe Trip is well-planned and innovative construction zone. And we want to make sure that we're committed to maintain safety or enhance it, as well as reliability. When we talk about reliability, we recognize that as soon as you put up barrels, you're going to have a reduction in the way people are driving through a corridor, or whether they're walking, biking, or they're using transit. So reliability has to do with, let's say right now it takes you 20 minutes to get to the airport. As soon as we're under construction, it's probably going to take you 30. And so you'll start developing a planning time index. And reliability is where it's still going to take you 30, even when we're closing lanes. We want to make sure that you might be in an off-peak period you still want to be able to rely on the fact that you can still get to the airport in that 30 minutes. We want to make sure that people have quality transportation choices. So we aren't, that regional demand management is going to address the bike routes, the bike network, and how can we accelerate construction and have that in place before we even go into construction. We're looking at technology, so the strategic innovation. Can we use transit signal prioritization? Can we use apps to help people plan their trips out? We've even looked at one that's called Agile Mile, which is a potential. They used it on the I-4 Ultimate, and it is a way for people to look at chain trips. So you have multi-modes that you choose in order to plan your entire trip. And then proactive communication. We're working hard to establish sensors and pull in data as quickly as possible, and then find ways to communicate and push that data out to the travelers, regardless of the mode that you choose. Next, please. We're spending a lot of time in looking at our goals, and we're very close to being settled in on these. So it's important for you to see that we are looking at, let's see, let me just look at traffic management. It's not just about moving cars and looking at capacity. There may be a left turn or a right turn that we may want to install, because let's say there's a detour just in order to construct a portion of a bridge. We might have a detour overnight. We need to make sure we're going to be able to manage traffic as smooth as possible and still accommodate those pedestrians, cyclists throughout the corridor. And are people going to have access to transit? We're looking into advanced planning and predictive analytics using real-time information decision-making. How quickly can we use sensors that are on the interstate? Can we, we'll use those sensors and use analytics as quickly as possible, and then push it back down into our changeable message signs that are already out there. Regional demand management, we may have an opportunity to increase the mobility through quality, frequency, and reliability of transit. When we talk about our transit, we're already talking about not just park and rides out in some O&D areas, or the origin areas, but do we have secured bike parking? So we're trying to get down into the nitty gritty, and it's going to take a partnership in order to make this happen. So even though DOT is leading this, right now we're in a phase of putting as many strategies onto the table, and we're not letting anything fall off the table yet. And we're going to be looking for partners to implement some of the smaller parts of the project for success. Innovation, something that we can consider, or we continuously hear since we've been active in the Tampa Bay Smart Cities Alliance. There's a lot of conversation about work zone data exchange. So currently the department, we push out information through Florida 511 on our current construction zones and when there's lane closures, and those are happening on a regular basis. But then we have agencies that also have lane closures. And I have a specific example real quick that I'd like to share, that on I-275 northbound near Kennedy, we had to close it overnight in order to remove one of the overhead signs in association with the punch-through project. Well, we made a call the night before, talked with the city of Tampa, talked to them about the diversion route that we were going to implement during the closure of the detour. So they modified all the signal timing in order to accommodate that condition that we were going to have. And lo and behold, the city closed Cypress the same night. And we didn't know that. So that was a clear sign that we need to establish a platform in order to share information for work zones. Hillsborough County is on the in that conversation, as well as Pinellas. So within our industry, we're working with Cutter, and we're establishing a platform for us to have that information shareable on a regular basis. And then public outreach or public engagement. It is the voices that you bring that have helped us transition to where we are today. And you need to be commended. That I fully respect the fact that when you your concerns, you help shape and you push us being collective, all of us within the government, in order to move to a better place and to a better product. And we wouldn't be here without that conversation. We're listening, and we can't get everything. I mean, it is what it is. There's thousands of people that don't want to live downtown. They want to be in a more rural location, yet their job takes them downtown. We also, I mentioned real time. That is part of the public engagement, as well as part of traffic management and innovation, and regional demand management, is getting the real time data out there. So people have on their app, they're getting information on Waze. So as soon as there's an incident that happens, they're getting the information. Well, we're pumping data into that same system, and they're pulling data out of our current system right now because of Florida 511. So we're very much in the data exchange business. Next, please. Here's just an overview of what we're evaluating and taking into consideration. Obviously, the bright yellow is 275, but then you can see in a lower level, you can see the complexity of the network. So we are looking at all of this in a transportation network perspective. And then what you don't see on the camera is, or on this map, is also we have a bicycle network that we're evaluating. Through here right now, the focus, you see this AMP Arterials Management Program that is highlighted there. We have on system, off system. Matter of fact, we just had a call yesterday about funding off system conditions. A lot of that is about instrumentation. How can we use technology to enhance mobility throughout the region much more aggressively than we have before? One way that we have been doing an implementation, and you may not even realize it, along the lines with Paula Flores's work, we've been using signal timing for speed management. We've reduced signal timing or our cycle lengths during off-peak periods. So the pedestrians that are just trying to cross the street, they're being served on a more frequent basis. So their wait at each corner has gone down. So there's those small elements you may not even be aware, but those are being deployed across the region. But it is going to take this whole network in order for to support the needs of everyone in the community. Next, please. I mentioned origin destination. So in our process of regional demand management, we are looking at transit. We focus on that in kind of a separate little bucket. But at the same time, we're looking at micromobility. We have some great opportunities and proven technology, or not technologies, but proven programs using the scooter. What about bike share? Are those opportunities for a 3-mile radius? Because that's a good planning tool for biking for commuters. So is there going to be opportunity that someone that's in West Shore or has a job in West Shore, and so they're commuting just 2 days a week now, maybe because of teleworking opportunities, then, and they may be living in like South Howard or Soho or somewhere down in South Tampa. So now how can they get to work in West Shore without getting in a car? So we're looking at those opportunities. And are there going to be opportunities for us to advance, like I mentioned earlier, some of the bike network? We have the analysis going on right now, the regional model, and we're getting into a lot of detailed analysis to look at where people are starting and where they are headed into the West Shore area, and how do we help accommodate those trips. Next, please. Now, I mentioned innovation. So in innovation, the top portion of that is on creating a safer environment And it also help serve the number of vehicles that are trying to get through on the interstate system while we're under construction. This actually, some of this technology, once we test it out on some other we have a pilot project that we're working on towards for Gateway, which is in Pinellas, obviously. We're looking at using smart work zones in order to create an environment that's going to be much more effective in managing the traffic along those work zones. So the two elements that we're focusing on right now is speed harmonization and zipper merge. Speed harmonization, in order to enhance safety, is really encouraging drivers to go through the work zone in a more smooth way. So everyone's driving about the same speed. Maybe they're driving at 60, or maybe it's driving at 55 or 50, and that's perfectly acceptable. It's the people that are driving at the sporadic speeds, those are the ones that create the riskier environment when it comes to safety, or the people that are driving much slower than that. The zipper merge, I think we have a link. We didn't test it out earlier. There should be a link in, yes, could you try that? And that'll explain the zipper merge more readily.
Can you see that?
I can see it. I'm not,
Yes.
yeah, let's see if the speaker shows up. Go ahead. No, the speaker's not working. If you,
Coming in very faint.
yeah, it's very faint for me.
Traffic volumes are low, cars are moving at highway. Traffic is heavy, now one way.
Okay, I could almost do a voiceover for this. So what you see on the right-hand side is that's what the way we typically run, where we have a merge when we have a lane closure. Most lane closures are going to happen overnight. So a zipper merge is where we set up the technology. We recognize that there's slower traffic, and now we want people to push forward and use both lanes, and then you start merging together at the merge point. And so it's proven over and over in many places that it's a more efficient way to get the same volume of traffic through, or a higher volume of traffic, but it's much safer because it reduces those people that want to push up and cut in. It is much safer because everyone's moving much slower. And we're already in a conversation about deploying this and showing it out amongst smaller groups. And I apologize, we didn't have an opportunity to double check the sound on that. But you can just Google it, and just Google zipper merge, and you'll be able to see some other ideas on that. We are working with central office in order to deploy this. We also are working with FHP on making sure that we can use variable speed limit signs in order to have those enforced as well. So it's a very complex deployment, and we'd like to continue to pilot this before we get to construction. So our construction, and I apologize earlier, I don't think I mentioned that our construction date is we expect shovels in the ground 2024. Next, please. Okay, public engagement. I mentioned earlier about Florida 511. We do have an app, and you can tailor it for gaining the information that you would like to have. We also have a website that you can reach into and beyond these tools, we do have a very robust program in order to do outreach. Right now, we've been going through a whole sequence of all the MPO committees right now with Hillsborough County. We are already talking about Pinellas as well as Pasco, but then in our, I think it's on the next slide, because of all the work that we've done for the last several years, we already have an established network of communities and small groups, targeted areas for us to have conversations with to find out what the needs are. And we're not talking about not just roadway considerations, but how do we make sure that people are getting the information that they need? How do they want to stay in touch? And we need to make sure that we have an established program because we will be under construction for at least 6 years. It seems to be stalled.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it to advance. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then we also have a community advisory task force. And so within that task force, we have multiple organizations and agencies that are represented there. But that's not where it stops. We aren't just talking to that group that was on the other slide, but we continue additional public engagement. And we are establishing ourselves to handle public hearings in the virtual networks. Next, please. Then, as I mentioned, I came to realize that THEA with Gandhi, that's a prime opportunity for us to understand in the most recent lesson learned, especially when it comes to the businesses and how they relate and their experience associated with that. We have already talked with I-4 Ultimate, so we've talked to the district there. And in multiple capacities. We have also talked with Missouri DOT and learned from them. They had some recommendations. Fortunately, they were able to shut down their interstate though, and before they went into construction. But they had a great idea where they had a circle of influence, and they looked at all the roadway projects that fell within that. And we have a map right now, and we are looking at all our work program projects within DOT as well as the city and the county to see how they fall within our construction schedule and see if we may have an opportunity to advance some and delay others. I-66 up in Virginia, we've already talked with them as well. And then we do have a call coming up with Wisconsin DOT. Next, please. And then our last slide is about the schedule. So we are in the process of establishing our the Safe Trip program. We're still in the early stages. We are refining our goals as well as our performance metrics. We expect to have a completed program document come spring. And after that, we're going to let it rest a little bit, but then we expect that it's going to be a live document and we will begin to refine it and update it on an ongoing basis. It is expected to be a part of the contract documents, and so the contractors will participate with us on that as well. And then right in the middle, you can see where we're already looking at early project deployment. What can we get on the ground before we go down under construction? And that's the end of my slide presentation, and I'm sure you probably have questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Appreciate the presentation, and there's a lot to digest there. Questions, Steve Hollenkamp?
Yes.
Stephen.
Margaret, that was very informative. So your job is managing the construction process, not really making this project happen in the first place. So does that mean that, would you feel comfortable talking about the project as a whole, or would you rather not go there?
Okay, so my responsibility is about maintaining mobility during construction.
Okay.
So yeah, when it comes to design details related to any of the sections, that is not my responsibility. But I'm at the table and I do ask questions.
Okay, well, you're a traffic engineer and you've done some CNU stuff, so I'm sure you're familiar with the concepts of induced demand. And you know, we hear a lot from FDOT that this is going to reduce congestion, it's going to reduce drive times, and by 2040, it's going to be faster to go from Plant City to St. Pete than it is today. It's going to save, we're going to save 10 minutes by 2040 based upon these big investments now. And when you look historically at road projects we've made over the last 50 years, you don't see a lot of evidence of that actually ever occurring. And that's a lot of people think because of induced demand, because humans are complex creatures and we change our behavior, and it's not super easy to reduce congestion. As a smart traffic engineer working for FDOT, I would love to hear, because I've never heard of a response from FDOT on induced demand. I'm wondering if you could shed light and kind of educate me on FDOT's position on this, or your position on this, or how you reconcile induced demand into a big project like this.
Well, that's a really loaded question.
Sorry.
Yes, I agree with you that there is just getting people there faster. Okay, so I really would need to dissect this, and maybe we should have a conversation over coffee when I'm not wearing this brand. But I want you to know that I do sit and I challenge a lot of people here since I've been sitting in the chair. So when you mentioned about getting from point A to point B faster, that I've pushed that concept to sort of off the table a little bit more, and I'm going to have to apologize if I misstate anything. These are from my perspective, and I don't necessarily represent exactly what others may say. So, but I have been pushing the organization to look at planning time index a little bit more than travel time, specifically during peak hours. So, for example, if you sometimes it's cheaper to fly out of Orlando. I don't know if anybody does that, but sometimes I do, or I have friends that are coming to visit me that they're going to fly to Orlando instead. So if I have to go and pick someone up, depending on when they fly in, I have to decide how long I'm going to give myself in order to get to the airport to go pick them up. And so let's say if there's nothing, it's an off-peak period, I plan on an hour and 15 minutes for myself. But if it is during a peak hour, wow, I might have to plan for 3. Or if I have a flight for myself to catch, or if I'm taking someone to the airport, you may have to plan for 3 hours in order to get there, not knowing if there's going to be a crash. So there's this concept of planning time index, and that's what we're trying to get to, which is similar to reliability. I completely understand the demand, what was the term that you used about the
Demand?
Say it again, I missed the beginning.
Induced demand.
Induced demand. I understand that concept, and that's from a regional perspective. It's a challenge. I don't know that any city almost in the world has really figured that out. It's complex. I mean, it's land use induced. We build and we approve land use out beyond and into these rural areas where people want to live, and then all of a sudden they complain of how long it takes to get downtown. It's one of those things. And then it's similar to when you also have a lot of lanes and then all of a sudden you come up to a traffic signal. The traffic signal ends up metering the amount of traffic that you can process. So it almost doesn't matter. You can have 10 lanes, or 4 lanes is probably more realistic here. You can have 4 lanes that are coming up to an intersection, but it's the intersection that's going to be your bottleneck, whether there's a grade separated interchange there or not. I mean, there's enough influx. I'm not sure if I answered
Thank
your
you, Margaret.
question, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Margaret. I know it's a complex question. I feel like the tough part for me and just trying to think objectively about what's the right way to manage transportation in our county and in our state, when it feels like the public says, it takes me a long time to get to work. And the public says, intuitively, that means we need to expand all the roads. That'll shorten the drive time. And when the data shows it's complex, that doesn't actually happen. We can turn I-4 into 10 lanes, but by 2040, it's still going to take you an hour and 20 minutes to go from Plant City to St. Pete. But that's a hard thing to communicate to the public. And the tough part for me is FDOT doesn't educate people about that. FDOT actually seems to lean in a little bit and say, yeah, the drive times will be reduced, when we just know from the last 50 years of expanding all roads across America that doesn't happen. And so that's why every time I talk to anyone at FDOT, I bring this up, because I'm looking for some explanation on how FDOT can say this will reduce drive times, which is the reason that people vote and want this to happen. When it doesn't reduce drive times, it just puts more cars on the road, and there's benefits to that, arguably. But it doesn't reduce drive times, but FDOT still says that. And so I'm still just looking for some answer on what kind of reconciles the history of what we've learned, that it's really hard to reduce congestion, with FDOT's constant touting of, okay, no project has ever reduced congestion really, but this one will be the first. It's going to reduce congestion by 20%. So, and then everyone votes for it. And I'm just looking for an answer here. So thank you for your thoughts though. And if you have anything else on induced demand, I'd love to hear it, or get coffee to hear more from you.
Okay, and I understand exactly where you're coming from, and it is complex. And I'm not sure whose responsibility is to educate everyone across the board. I don't know that it's really FDOT's. They're in response, and I don't know how to change that overall process. I do ask in the slide presentation, one of the key phrases that I always have been pushing for 30 years is choice. So what I've been pushing for is, in order for us to establish a higher quality of life within the Tampa Bay region, is to have quality transportation choices. So unfortunately, throughout Florida, I've only lived here for 4 years, but throughout what I continuously see throughout Florida is that it's all built around the automobile. And well, not all, but it is built around the automobile. It's a quality of life that people perceive. And so I like to push creating a situation where people have transportation choices that are quality choices. We don't want to make it an afterthought. We want people to be able to ride their bike. I live in Tampa Heights, so it's easy for me to ride my bike downtown or over to yoga over in an e-board. And so I have a lifestyle that allows me that, and that's what I chose. And I used to live in Channelside. So when people live in further areas, I don't have to do the commute. And I did that by a lifestyle choice myself. And I live in a small 1,200 square foot home because I had the 2,800 square foot home. Don't want it.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Stephen, for your question. Rick Fernandez has a question or a comment.
Oh, probably both. Hey, Margaret, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. Welcome to the CAC. These are fun meetings for FDOT folks, so good for you. And I see that you're in Tampa Heights. And I see that you're in Tampa Heights, so we are neighbors. Maybe we can get together at King State and have that coffee that Stephen's talking about. We can go to Rubble's Park and walk around the pond and talk out the problems.
Yeah, we've got a lot of friends in common, I know.
Yeah, I think so. First, I want to make sure I've got the timeline straight. You made comment to the fact that shovels would be in the ground 2024, so that's 4 years out. And at another point, I think you said that it's a 6-year construction project. So for the West Shore interchange, we're talking about a completion date of 10 years out, 2030. Is that right?
Yeah, those are the numbers. Yes, it's in that ballpark, yes.
Okay. And between now and 2024, other than you planning for how we're going to manage it, what happens between 20 and 24 vis-a-vis West Shore?
What happens? What do you mean specifically? Like roadway projects or instrumentation?
Well, no, I mean, in regard to West Shore interchange itself, are we simply in a state of stasis between now and 2024 and then shovels start turning, or is there something happening preliminary to the construction beginning in 4 years?
And I think, Margaret, he's working towards asking if there's going to be traffic disruption between now and 24.
Okay, so no, what is going on currently relative to the interchange is all the contract documentation, the concepts. Like we are evaluating, there's a concept on the maintenance of traffic or temporary traffic control for all the construction. And so we're looking at pinch points. We're looking at how anything during construction might have an impact on the local area network, and how are we going to facilitate anyone that's going to divert from the interchange. You know, how are they going to be using local area network, and then how can we pick that up using an alternative mode or giving them mode choice so they don't even get in the car to begin with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think I hear what you're saying. So we're going to be spending 4 years planning for and trying to mitigate any adverse impact, planning for the actual turning of soil in 4 years. It's a planning process and then a construction process. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there is a mix. I mean, there's a much broader TB Next presentation just for this area that
Oh, I know that's fine. I don't want to extend that too far. Okay. You mentioned MoDOT. I was on a benchmarking trip back in 2017 that FDOT facilitated. Yeah, that was fun. I had good ribs up there. We went to St. Louis, and supposedly to go see how it is that a city that knows how to do it right actually works with their community before they go through one of these road building projects. Very, very informative. You mentioned that the Department of Transportation up in St. Louis actually shut down their interstate completely and did their work. There was nothing of this, having to redirect people and, worrying about how the construction project was going to be navigated, because it was all being done in a separate environment, because people were given transit options. As I understand it, they had a transit system in place before they shut down the interstate, and then they did their work and reopened. Is that your understanding of the timeline?
Yes, they shut it down. They closed 2 sections independent of each other, and then they did a lot of instrumentation and some minor intersection improvements along some of their arterials. And then their road ranger equivalent, they had a team that was focused on those arterials to help clear those roads as quickly as possible. They have some parallel system. There's another interstate that they were able to remark. So they redid the pavement markings to allow 3 lanes in each direction and have narrower shoulders. So there were a lot of opportunities that they had worked through in order to accommodate the mobility of people through their network.
Okay. I'm wondering if there's any discussion being had at DOT or between DOT and HART that I'm not familiar with.
Yes.
With regards to pumping more money into our local transit systems, bus service, other scenarios where people will be given mobility choices over the course of the next 4 years, so that when this construction project begins, if it ever begins, that they will actually have something that they can utilize other than their bike or their feet to get where it is they need to go. It strikes me that as part of the planning process, it might be a good thing to do what the Department of Transportation in Missouri did, and actually build out some type of a transit system that makes sense, so people have multimodal choices before this disruption occurs. So is there any thought of funneling money in that direction to assist us in that regard?
Absolutely. Yes, that's one of, when we look at our regional demand management, when we look at the different modes, we have a focused area for transit. And we have been talking already with HART. In our overall process, we're honing in on identifying the origin destination. Is really important for us to know where people are coming from who might be employed in West Shore, and how we can support them to use transit in a convenient way, in a reliable way, as an alternative or as their choice instead of getting in their car. We have that separate conversation already. Funding is right at the top of the list as well. So we are looking at different ways for us to pay for any kind of programs, and we're paying attention to what our limitations might be, in addition to what our opportunities are. When I go back, there's a lot of, it's a robust program. FDOT's not going to be able to do everything. And so we're going to have to rely on some of the other partner agencies and organizations. If they can go out and get a grant to build some paths to get people to an origin, let's say, for instance, that there's a park and ride that's established somewhere in New Tampa, and then let's make sure that we have trails to get there as well, and then secured sheltered parking for their bicycles. And then that way we have a good hub at an origin level, and then let's make sure that we have the transit that's going to run between that origin and then bring them down into West Shore. And then we need to make sure that they have the capability of getting to their door, the front door of their office building. And so we are looking first mile, last mile. We're trying to be as absolutely as thorough as possible, and we do appreciate, as we move through this process, having opportunities to ask questions. I mean, the MPO is sitting right with us, so you can send your comments to Beth Alden or any of her team in order to bring that over to us. And then the documents will be public as well.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to take any more of your time. I appreciate it, Chair. We'll have coffee.
Boy.
The Tampa Heights gathering. Okay, any further questions of Margaret?
I have a question, Mr. Chair. Do you see me with my hand raised? It's Christine Acosta.
Go ahead, Christine. So thank you.
Hi, thank you. In the interest of full transparency, I do want to start by saying that I consider Margaret a friend, and this is the second time that I've seen this presentation. That said, Margaret, you used a term that I have not heard before, which was something like an urban design, urban build out model. Can you just say a little bit more about what that is? I got the feeling that it is positively affecting the infrastructure before the highway construction, but I wanted you to elaborate a little bit, please.
Sure. From my perspective, because I do use the network, and I've hung out with a lot of architects, drinking not just coffee at the middle of the night, but drinking a lot of wine. Andres Duane is and Dan Burden are, these are some of the greats, and those are my friends. When it comes to the urban element, it's all about the quality of the facility. So just so you guys can be encouraged, earlier this week, we had a conversation about what even the downtown partnership has in mind. And we're talking about what it's like in order to travel underneath these viaducts, which really, it brought to light a lot of things that I'm very curious about Gandy, and I haven't been down on Gandy for a while under the extension. And I'd like to go out there and visit it again and see what the long-term vision is. But it's all about making sure that the urban grid is restored. One of the best things about what's happening, where the flour mill, they finally acquiesced, or whatever that was, we finally are able to reclaim some of the grid of the network by bringing those streets from the east side over near Channel Side all the way through and underneath the Salmon Expressway and back into the downtown grid. One of the reasons why that corridor doesn't function, Meridian doesn't function well, is because it doesn't have any grid. And so that's really going to be very influential in successes. To go back to the urban design and under our current condition, if you can imagine how Franklin Street is going underneath I-275 now, or is that I-4? That's 275, or Nebraska under, okay, anyway. So under 275, if you think you have multiple bridges there, and because of when that viaduct was built, it's very low, and so it gets dark. So how do we enliven that area, or how do we make that a much safer place for people to walk or bike underneath there? And it is about doing the lighting underneath. So we've already got some conversations going on. Okay, how can we light underneath that bridge now? And we can pull safety funding or something. We're looking to find ways to get it done today. And then how do we look at that space of what Franklin looks like as it goes underneath the interstate? I used to make a joke for a project that I was working on in Bradenton, and it was when someone had proposed a viaduct down there, I was like, well, at least it provides shade. So there is an advantage of quality of life, but it's all about making sure that you have that grid and it's transparent. There's a lot of people that are trying to get from Pinellas to Hillsborough. And in any mode that you can find, it's really hard to overcome that. It's really, really difficult. And my observation for being in this area is that as long as we're going to have these raised structures, it's about how do we make sure that the grid is maintained underneath, and this just kind of rides above it. And it's not destroyed. That connectivity isn't destroyed through long cycle times and or cycle lengths and things like that. Did that address the question enough?
Yeah, that was a good answer. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Good question.
Thank you, Christine. Other questions? I don't have a full screen. Rich, do you see anybody else who wants to comment?
I don't, but I have to tell you, the last hour or so, I lost my control panel, so I'm sort of flying blind.
Okay. Well, Margaret, thank you for coming. It's a good presentation. Sorry we got you off onto a somewhat broader series of subjects, but welcome.
No, it's perfectly fine. It really is. And I really appreciate the opportunity to come before you. So thank you very much.
We'll look forward to having you back. Thank you. Committee members, the next item on our agenda is unfinished and new business. Does anybody have something they want to bring forward? I have one item myself. I don't see any hands. I wanted to bring the HART CSX feasibility study before this committee. You'll recall that we recommended the MPO move this up in the tip, and this was a recommendation that was accepted. At the most recent meeting of the HART board, they authorized either the establishment or the continuation of a feasibility study for the CSX lines. And I think that process is moving forward. They have a budget of $120,000. I'd like to see if this committee has any interest in going on record in recommending or recommending your support for this feasibility study, since it somewhat originated with our group. Anybody have a comment or care to make any motions relative to that feasibility study?
Yeah, this is Ed. I certainly would recommend that we go on record supporting that. I mean, I think there's huge potentials for using the CSX corridor for any number of transportation options, and this is a small first step.
I would second that. If it's a motion, I would second it. It's Christina Costa.
Okay. Ed, can I accept that as a motion to support the feasibility study by Hart?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to support that. Any discussion on the motion? I'll ask the clerk to call the roll, and hopefully we have a quorum left. Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Can you call the roll on this motion?
Yes. Scott White.
Can you restate the motion?
Ricardo Fernandez.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
Somebody asked for the motion to be repeated.
Ed Majerski made the motion that we go on record as supporting the feasibility study to be provided by Hart, and Christine Acosta seconded.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
I'll sign it again. Ricardo Fernandez is a yes. Hoyt Prendel. Hoyt Prendel. David Bailey.
Yes. Aye.
Handy.
Yes.
Stephen Hollenkamp.
Yes.
Nicole Rice.
Yes.
Cheryl Soule. Christine Acosta.
Yes.
Artie Fryer or Nancy Castellano. Bill Roberts.
Yes.
Edward Merzinski.
Yes.
Don Skelton Jr.
Yes.
Cliff Reese.
Yes.
Luciano Prida.
Yes.
Camilla Soto.
Aye.
Terrence Trott.
Yes.
Amy Espinosa.
Yes.
Rick Richmond.
Yes.
And Barney Gibson.
Yes.
Oh. Okay. We have 16 yeses, and it's a unanimous vote with who's present.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your support. I would
Chairman?
also, I'm sorry, was somebody going to raise a question or an issue? Nikki, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Chairman, I would like to make a motion in regards to the earlier piece of business we had. After sitting here, is that possible to put on the table at this point, since we have a quorum?
We do have a quorum. What is the issue?
In regards to our letter, which was our first piece of business today, I would like I wasn't sure how to phrase this earlier, but I'd like to make a motion to add into the language or to revisit it in the next meeting that we support the MPO prioritizing funding to disenfranchised neighborhoods.
So this would be a motion to either add language or to at least recommend the MPO with regard to our resolution on racial discrimination. Is that right?
Yes, to prioritize funding to disenfranchised neighborhoods.
Okay, I'll accept that motion. Is there a second?
Amy Espinosa will second.
We have a motion and a second to recommend to the MPO. I'm going to suggest, Nikki, with your consent, that this be a recommendation rather than an addition to the resolution that has already been passed and debated. Is that acceptable?
I just believe that language should be in at least the last paragraph of the resolution.
Mr. Prindle, or if you are still here, would you care to comment on whether that's acceptable?
Or any other member of the
Bill, yeah, Bill, this is David. Nikki, so we did talk about all of those things, but like Bill mentioned earlier, we were trying to kind of keep the one idea in mind. And I think that's why Hoyt was saying this would be a great addition for, and it's a living document to maybe add on it down the road. But as it stands now, we did talk about that, and we kind of chose to just focus on the one point that we have there. So that's why we don't have that in there. But it was something that was discussed, and I understand your point. But we came to an understanding of the document the way it is, because we thought the best message was just to be what we had there, and then maybe down the road they add on some other things. But we wanted to stay on task and stay focused with this particular document as it being the first document, and that's why that's not in there.
Okay, and my question to you, David, especially being on that committee, is ultimately the role of the MPO is to determine the priority of funding. So when we don't address that in the letter, I feel like it doesn't bring as much to the table to actually help who we're trying to speak for in this letter. So I just do feel that that is important, and maybe we can table it, especially. But I think that language is very simple, but perhaps encourage the MPO to prioritize funding to disenfranchised neighborhoods, because that is the role of the MPO.
And when you say, so
David, go ahead.
Go ahead, Christian. I was just going to say, I think it's something that we could probably table, but, and I agree with you. I do understand the role, but I would probably say the best thing to do is probably table it.
I would like to chime in, if I may, that Nikki, I really appreciate where you're coming from on this recommendation. I'd like it to be phrased as a recommendation. When we had our committee meeting, we had the benefit of other MPO members participating in our dialogue who were able to cite pre-existing commitment and favor being placed on policies and expenditures that are intended for communities of concern. So we worked our way through, to David's point, to keep it as concise as possible, knowing that behind the scenes, the mission of the CAC is already identified, and that the allocation of funding is already supported to encourage economic development for communities of concern and those that are disenfranchised. So there's more that goes behind the language of this that is already pre-existing. So if you're okay with it, I think I like the chair's idea of having your remark as a recommendation for our committee. Perhaps we'll even recircle again or gather again. But I want you to know that your feedback was in fact discussed, and we found it just wasn't necessary to allocate space on a hopeful one-page resolution to reiterating what is already in place.
Thank you, Christine. Rick Fernandez.
Just real quickly, Nikki, thank you for your comments and thoughts, and I'm right with you there. I understand where you're coming from. My suggestion is, with regards to the language and definition, I'm a little, I have a problem with using the term disenfranchised community, because I mean that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. And when we get around to actually wordsmithing this living document at some point down the road, whenever it is we do that, I would think we'd be well advised to define that term more carefully and maybe actually specify areas within the jurisdiction of the MPO that we're talking about by actual name. I mean, why not talk about College Hill? Why not talk about Robles Park? If we're going to be talking about communities of concern and disenfranchised communities, let's be specific about who these good folks are, because otherwise there's too much room for debate and uncertainty. But that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Christine, would you care to make a motion to table this this recommendation?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. This is Amy Espinosa. I have one comment. That's okay.
Please. Go ahead, Amy.
I wanted to support Nikki's motion because I agree that this language needs to be revisited. I voted for it because I believe in the concept, but I do have issue with some of the language. So I just wanted to put that on the record.
Thank you, Amy.
Okay. So I will remove my, I will take my motion off the floor in regards to that, but I do want to make a motion for a recommendation to revisit the language in our document, because while it is implied to us and in the language inside the MPO, I think our document is something that when the public sees it, they need to be aware that that is a part of the mission. So if we could be sure to table this, would that be possible as a recommendation?
I think what you're trying to achieve would best be accomplished by tabling your motion, and let's discuss it at our next meeting, and then we can bring it before the MPO once we've satisfied the language. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, it's fair enough. I mean, it does need to be crafted properly, but the implication that people who read this understand that that's part of the mission, I think, is us making assumptions, and we need to make a public statement that informs people that this is part of the mission of the MPO, and I think it's imperative that we have language in there to represent that part of the mission.
Fair enough. Is there a motion to table the motion made by Nikki for our next meeting?
Yes, Chair, this is Christina Costa. I'll make that motion, and I will add that since Nikki already gave a lot of quality thought to exactly what the phrasing is that she is suggesting, that we make note of that for our next discussion on the resolution.
Fair enough. We have a motion to table. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I think Cliff Reese agreed to second it. Being no further discussion, if the clerk would call the roll, we'll act on the motion to table Nikki's motion. Madam Clerk?
Yes. Sky White. Ricardo Fernandez.
Yes to the table.
Hoyt Prendel. Hoyt Prendel. David Bailey.
Aye.
Vivian Handy.
Can you hear me? Aye.
Yes.
Stephen Hollenkamp. Stephen.
Yes, sorry.
Nicole Rice.
Yes.
Cheryl Thole. Christina Costa.
Yes.
Artie Fryer or Nancy Castano. Bill Roberts.
Yes.
Edward Brzezinski.
Yes.
Don Skelton Jr.
Yes.
Cliff Reese.
Yes.
Luciana Prada.
Yes.
Camilla Soto.
Yes.
Ernst Trott.
Yes.
Amy Espinosa.
Yes.
Rick Richmond.
Yes.
And Barbara Kennedy Gibson.
Yes.
We have 16 yeses and it's unanimous.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the discussion, and Nikki, thank you for bringing that forward. I'd like to call on Rick Richmond for a report from the T-BARTA CAC.
Yes, thank you, Bill, and committee members. Our last meeting was June 17th, and I'll have the committee know that Bill Roberts was elected to be the chair of the T-BARTA CAC. So congratulations, Bill, and his excellent leadership of both this community, and I'm sure going forward with T-BARTA. Our last meeting, we did discuss innovative. We received a report or small update on innovative transit technologies. This includes urban gondolas, air taxis, and Hyperloop. So these are just some technologies that are in prototype testing. And then I think the urban gondolas, if you've been seeing the media recently, there's been some reports of other metro areas that utilize these, and maybe what are the opportunities in this region. So the second item was the update on the regional rapid transit. There are 3 alternatives that they are passing forward. They are options 1, 3, and 5. Those are available on the T-BARTA website, but essentially option 1 is a baseline where the bus will operate in mixed traffic. Level 3 is what would be referred to as the mid-level, which is a mixed proportion of operating in mixed traffic, and express lanes, which would be on the Gandhi. And then 5 would be the full built, where it would be dedicated BRT line for the bus to travel in. That study goes to the environmental phase and a completion of 30% plans that would run through the end of this year. So that's the other thing that'd be interesting. I know you saw in the media, and our next meeting is in August 19th. So next Wednesday, T-BARTA did have their funding for next year removed during the DeSantis budget, 1.5 million for next year. So it would be interesting to see how that plays out in the coming budget year, or if it gets reinstated. So that's my report, Bill. If anyone has any questions, thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Questions about the T-BARTA CAC?
I do.
Vicki, go ahead.
I've never had to go because you actually always do attend these meetings, but I do actually read and review and look at the presentations for it. I do feel it's important on this committee, if you have the opportunity, is there a way to make sure that everybody is shared the agenda for T-BARTA? Because I feel it is sometimes in conflict with where we are at or what's being discussed.
Sure.
It's just a totally different direction. It's actually, in some ways, I hate to say this, but I almost find it comic relief. I really, it shows how we're disconnected, unfortunately, as committees. And there's wonderful people who do sit there, but I do wonder, is there a way to make sure everybody here has access to the agenda so that they can as well see the presentations to see different viewpoints about one bigger puzzle we're all trying to put together? I think it would be really important.
Nikki, I think that's an excellent suggestion. Christine, no laughing is allowed. If I may, I'll ask Rich to try to find a way to get the agenda for the T-BARTA board meeting in front of this committee as soon as it's published. If not, I can certainly facilitate doing that. Nikki, would your request extend also to the T-BARTA CAC meeting agendas?
Yeah, so when I monthly receive those sitting as the alternate, and like I said, I've never had to go, but I do actually look and read it and watch any kind of online presentation that I can. And I have found it really valuable to me. So I'm wondering, is that possible to just get that out to people on this committee so they can see that we're kind of all living in different worlds here?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, Rich.
This is Rich. We can ask T-BARTA to add everybody on our CAC to their distribution list. That way you get notified whenever they have an upcoming meeting and have the ability to view and perhaps download their agendas the same way you do ours.
Right. Good. I think that would be helpful. And if you would make that request apply to both the TBARTA board and the TBARTA CAC, for those who have the time and the interest, I think it would be helpful to do it. I can assure you that the position of chairman of the TBARTA CAC was not something I campaigned very heavily for. It kind of fell into my lap. So I'm going to follow Nikki's lead and try to better coordinate activities of our CAC with that of TBARTA, because I think sometimes we miss the overall larger picture. And you're all welcome to attend those meetings. They're public meetings. They're held on Zoom, and the presentations in the agenda packet are always very interesting. So any other comments on Rick Richmond's report?
No, I just want to say thank you to both of you for being there and being a voice there. So that you can maybe share that with everybody else.
Thank you.
And I just want to add one comment that was kind of, I guess it took it back. It wasn't surprised necessarily, but Bill, you were there, and I can't remember the member who said it, but they really, the comment was made that, they're really looking to Hillsborough County, our, MPO, to lead the effort in some of this BRT, understanding that, we are an employment hub. There's a lot of traffic north that commutes north and south to Pinellas County. And so that was, it sounds logical, but it was interesting to hear from another member outside of the area that really looking to us to lead the effort for the BRT and just regional transit in general. So I thought that was an important note. So
yeah, that's true. Good comment. And if I may ask Rick, if you would convey to the TBARTA CAC this committee's motion to support the HART study,
yes,
feasibility study, I think it would be good for them to know that we're encouraging and pushing that. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
So on our agenda, you can see that we have a managed lanes workshop coming up in October. And then our next regular meeting is September 9th at 9 o'clock. Is there any other new business to come before the CAC committee?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Not new business exactly. I did have a couple items. One point of clarification, going back to the motion that was tabled. So I just want to make sure I'm clear that you all want to continue to discuss the resolution before we take it forward to the MPO?
My impression, and I'll let Nikki speak to this, but I think that was not the intent, but that we would like to subsequently amend or add to our recommendation. Nikki, is that acceptable?
That is absolutely acceptable. The hard work of everybody who worked on that letter, in no way, shape, or form do I want to undermine that or delay it. It's timely. It needs to go forward, but I would like to revisit it to see if we can just fine tune it going forward into the records.
Or at least submit a supplemental recommendation. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Does that help you, Rich?
Yeah, thank you. And the other item, and this was my oversight, I did want to take a moment to recognize our newest member, Don Skelton Jr., who was appointed by the Port Authority, Port Tampa Bay, and approved by the MPO at their last meeting at the end of July. So I don't know if he wanted to take a minute just to say a couple of things to introduce himself.
Please.
Hey, I'm Don Skelton. Like it was already mentioned, I was appointed by Port Tampa Bay. I currently work here in the city of Tampa on Davis Island for Way Engineering, and my background is in transportation engineering and traffic planning.
Great. Well, we're happy to have you. We're happy to have representation from the port, and we look forward to your contributions to our committee. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Any other comments or business to come before the committee? Thank you all
I-
for hanging in there. I'm sorry,
I have a
Christine.
question, if I may. I'm wondering, when we did the tip approval, that we talked a little bit about the Laurel Street roundabout that has been approved for downtown Tampa, and we did that with the caveat that a request be made of the city of Tampa to install some safety, to build out some safety improvements, specifically perhaps closing the slip lanes that are there, because the build out for the roundabout is many years off at this point. So what happens after we make a recommendation like that? Is there, I mean, does it go into cyberspace? And I mean, what happens next?
Rich, can you address that for us?
Yes, I'll try. So that was a recommendation that was made by this committee and passed on to the MPO board. They did hear the recommendation. I don't believe they acted on it, but certainly, we can follow up with the city staff to see what the status of that project is, or see if it's possible to do what was intended by that motion. I mean, I think the reality is that unless it's state or federally funded, if it's a local project, all we can do is make recommendations to the city, and those recommendations would have to come through the MPO board.
Okay, I just want to understand, if we make recommendations, I want to know if they are actually delivered to the persons who might be able to act on them. So I'm just still learning. Thanks for helping me understand what goes on.
Sure.
Absolutely. And Rich, if you would put that item on our agenda for the next meeting, just for a follow-up, maybe we can determine whether or not further action by the CAC will be helpful to the city or the MPO.
Sure.
Any other comments or new business to come before the committee? Thank you, everybody, for hanging in there. Virtual meetings sometimes take a little longer, but I think we made a lot of progress today. And welcome to our newest member. We look forward to seeing Mr. Skelton at future meetings, and I'll talk to everybody again in September. No further business. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Ciao.
Bye, take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, thanks.